A Friend of a Friend is a short but heartfelt story that explores the far-reaching pain of finding out how little your relationships actually mean when those relationships are centered around a mutual friend. In this story, Spike is alone in Ponyville while Princess Twilight works on finding copies of all the books that were destroyed by T-Rex. This has her away in Canterlot for a week. Spike quickly becomes bored with his usual routine, and decides instead to spend time with the rest of his friends. However, upon finding out that the rest of the main cast don't really need him around, he begins to doubt his friendship with them entirely. This eventually causes him some relatable depression, as each of his other friends is perfectly content to carry on without him around. By the end of the story, Spike is shown that the rest of the girls are in fact his friends, and they work extra hard after the misunderstanding to make it up to him. What I love the most about this story are two things. The first of which is that the story is so like that of an actual episode. We have a happy setup, a progressing problem, a smooth transition from issue to resolution, and an ending that feels as natural as one in the show. The author takes great care in going through the different stages of the story, and each encounter with the different friends has its own evidence and impact. Rarity, for example, is the first friend Spike chooses to visit. She's immersed in her work to the point that she barely notices him standing in the same room, and absolutely misses him leaving a few minutes later. Spike justifies this by saying she's simply too busy to spend time with him, which has happened in the past. It's no surprise. But as we move on to each of the remaining friends, such reasoning pushes him farther into his sadness that it seems like they're purposefully ignoring him. Pinkie Pie, despite her ability to remember so much about so many ponies, seems completely lost when Spike mentions Twilight's birthday present. Fluttershy starts out by treating him as a welcome guest, but it all goes out the window when Spike sees her treat her pet in the same fashion. Applejack's work with an upcoming Zap Apple harvest is nearly done, so she rejects his offer to help her, worried he might regress into something similar to what happened in Spike at Your Service. And Rainbow Dash was too filled with adrenaline after perfecting a new routine to notice Spike's desire to spend time with her at all. The story gives every character a moment of breathing room, and in that moment, each character is shown in both a good and bad light. We don't need to necessarily define the characters, because the author pulls inspiration directly from the show and the official comics. Past experiences are mentioned in passing, as naturally as if they were mentioned in the show. The characteristics of the main cast are shown in loving detail and are done accurately. The second thing I love about the story is that it's also not like an episode. In its own way, Friend of a Friend branches into more mature territory without pushing anyone under the bus, whether the characters or the reader. The nature of gratitude is brought up with proper impact when Applejack reminds Spike that he saved her life. The nature of love is touched upon when Spike tries to come clean about his feelings for Rarity. The nature of regret is also brought up when Pinkie Pie and Fluttershy finally understand what's going on. One of the biggest strengths of the story is the fact that the characters are not made one-dimensional. They each have their actions, are given time to mull them over, and come to realize that Spike is not, in fact, as fine as he claims. To sum it up, for Rarity, she didn't notice him. For Pinkie Pie, she didn't listen to him. For Fluttershy, she treated him differently. For Applejack, she didn't need him. And for Rainbow Dash, she didn't spend time with him. Very mature subjects to cover. Once the realization is made, they all make conscious efforts to right their wrongs in their own ways. Applejack is down-to-earth and heartfelt. Rainbow Dash struggles with metaphors, while Rarity seems to rely on them too heavily. Pinkie Pie's apology is eccentric like her, and Fluttershy is sincere, if a bit confused. Despite how much I love this story, there were a few times where I had to call out Spike on his behavior. When it came down to it, he spent a little time with each of his friends, including the Cutie Mark Crusaders. But his bad experience with the Crusaders and Applejack were wholly his own doing, because they gave him an opportunity to spend more time with them, which he declined. In Spike's defense, by the time these opportunities came around, he was too depressed to accept them. But each time, it's shown that Spike sees the value in these opportunities, and he still decides not to take them. Misgivings aside, the story is wonderful. The author spends time to learn about the characters and their history, drawing evidence from the show and the comics. There's a direct mention to Friends Forever number 3, where Spike and Princess Celestia embark on a quest for crystal lenses, which Spike needs for a new telescope for Twilight's birthday. During the build-up to the story's climax, it's explained that Pinkie Pie wasn't aware of this particular adventure, because she had cake in her ears of all things. While this specific event is never shown in the comic, it's plausible for the show, and completely believable for Pinkie Pie. In addition to that, the interactions between Spike and Applejack are the most thought out and, in my opinion, simply the best when compared to the others. The author cites the episode Spike at Your Service when it came to writing for them, as well as inspiration manifestation when writing for Rarity. In both, he explains that the episode in question had more heart than any previous interaction between Spike and either mare. And in doing so, he manages to make the feelings of the characters more tangible, and the feelings the story gives off are indeed tangible. During my first read-through, I found myself hooked on the entire idea. I read the entire story while I was at work. The reader is allowed time to relate to Spike and his friends, given just enough explanation to understand what just happened without beating it over their head. We get to feel every drop in Spike's mood as he goes through the day, and then every ounce of panic as the girls realize just what's been going on. By the end, we're invested in both sides of the story, something that every character-driven drama should strive for. Overall, A Friend of a Friend is wonderful. Just wonderful. Fantastic characterization, superb pacing, and even relatable flaws make this a must-read for anyone looking for a more mature look into Spike's relationship with the rest of the main six. Hey guys, thanks for listening to me ramble on about a story I like. If there's another story you think I should review, drop a link down in the comments and I'll get to it. And while you're here, why not take a look at some of the other stuff I use my voice for?